Welcome to another episode of The Creators Outlet, sponsored by our friends over at the Inked marketing team. If you need a little extra help with your Kickstarter or Indiegogo, contact Kevin Gillette over at Inked Marketing. Just go to www.inked.marketing today. We want us to remind you that Heel Turn Issue 1, the comic, is live on Kickstarter for a few more hours. Check it out for yourself. It's where the world of professional wrestling meets Dexter. Get your copy today at www.inked.pub. Heel Turn today. And we welcome our guest, Jason Douglas. Welcome, sir.
Hey, hello. How are you? Thank you very much for having me on.
Good. Thanks for coming on. We did we were playing like a ping pong match back and forth for like the last week or so, and
it's time to make it happen. It's time to make it happen.
Got to make it happen. I'm just waiting to get my bookcases back from my friend so I can make what's behind you happen over here.
Oh yes, yeah. Not for show. I can confidently say I have read most of those books on those shelves.
Oh, very good. I've read all of my comic books. I got like 150 boxes here right now.
Nice.
So, and I am selling them to buy more comic books.
Of course, that's the way to do it, right?
You know, between stuff that catches my eye and and then I go check out some of the indie projects over on Kickstarter and Indiegogo too, and
right.
Got to shop around. There's more places than that place that's named after a gemstone to buy comics from nowadays.
For sure.
I want some place that's going to deliver my comics when they're not late or broken.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know, right? I've been having some pretty good luck recently, so I can't complain. I'm getting some good stuff.
Excellent.
And I'm happy because I just want something different to read once in a while. I'm only reading like 9 different books at the time. So
yeah.
I got a couple prose books, so I can say I'm actually reading a proper book. One of them I've been reading since 2003.
Nice.
It was in storage for a number of years. It's an anniversary tell-all of Alan Moore.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah, it's I think 25th anniversary or 50th anniversary, one of those two. Yeah. And there's like 143 different creators that have all chimed in to surprisingly say nice things about him.
That's
and
cool.
It's a biography, but he didn't write it. Somebody else to do that, and it's got a lot of cool old school Alan Moore picks from UK comics and ads that he's worked on, and pictures of his youth, so we know where Merlin grew up and in what castle, and
right.
A lot of stuff from his childhood. It's super interesting. I've recommended it to everybody. I'll take a snapshot of it and email it to you. So
yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, that sounds really cool.
And I'm reading a bunch of graphic novels and digging out books and seeing what I can sell to buy more books.
Yeah, right.
I'm a lot of the books I'm selling, certain series, I'm basically trading up. I'm getting rid of the floppies that take up a ton of room.
Sure.
And I'm upgrading to hardcovers that can go on a shelf or a bookshelf, and I can still enjoy them. And that way I will actually know where they are.
I just did the upgrade of my Uncanny X-Men Marvel Masterworks to the omnibuses that have come out in the last year and a half.
Oh, nice.
Which are very huge, very heavy, very impractical, but gorgeous, and I love them.
Yes. I've got a few of those. I've got I haven't opened it yet. It was actually bought as a gift for a friend of mine because the only comic he ever liked or read was The Incredible Hulk growing up.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be a birthday gift for him, but sadly, he passed away before I could give it to him. So I've still got it. It'll stay in my collection, and it'll stay the way it is wrapped. But it'll be a prominent place on the bookshelf because it was like one of my best friends. But I also have the special edition red leather Frank Miller Daredevil omnibus.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I'd have to. I used to put it on a table and then back up my computer chair on an angle to look at it, and carefully turn the pages. And I couldn't get close to it because I didn't want to drool all over it. Because that whole run was my high school years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I didn't know who most of Marvel were because I grew up on DC, and like Archie's and Harvey Toons, like all the cartoon ones from the 60s and 70s and stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew Marvel, and I knew a bunch of Marvel characters, but I didn't know like the landscape. I knew Hulk because TV show, cartoons. I knew Spider-Man because I used to read the Spider-Man strip in the daily newspaper when I was a kid, and get excited because Sunday it was in color.
Yes,
it was still only 3 panels, but it was in color. So I bought like a lot of Amazing Spider-Man off this. It was just a spinner rack in a little family-owned drugstore, before CVS and Walgreens bonus. I still remember buying Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man #1 off the spinner rack.
Nice. With from 76 with Tarantula on the cover.
Yep. I still have that here somewhere.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with a team book, Legion of Superheroes, that Michael Brian Bendis came over and destroyed this past couple of years. And stuff like that. I would buy Superman once in a while, but I liked the Superman cartoons. I still love the George Reed Superman TV show, but I was a Batman guy because 66 Batman started playing in reruns, so I would watch it every morning before I went off to school, and fell in love with Cesar Romero as the Joker, and and as you can see, Joker fan. So
yeah. That Daredevil run is a heck of a gateway into it, though. I mean, it broke so many conventions, in my opinion. For the late. Well, I mean, he started drawing it in 79, and then started writing it a year later or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was still there was still that Marvel editorial mandate of the recap, that kind of. Any issue could be somebody's first issue. So there's that kind of ham-fisted way to recap who he was and what the situation was in those first few pages or panels, every single issue. But other than that, I remember reading as a kid going, this is not like other things that I was reading, and just being very impressed with what he did with that book. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I had said, is Daredevil like Marvel's Batman? And they were like, no. Moon Knight is like Marvel's Batman.
Right.
Daredevil is Marvel's punching bag.
Yes.
I'm like, cool. And I became a long, hard fan of Daredevil, and I collected it for probably about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I had a hell of a run, and then I ended up selling it off. I still have the I don't want to call it rebirth, but the Frank's second short little run.
I know what you're talking about. Yes,
I still have all those. I still have
Born Again.
Born Again. Yes.
Yeah. I
still have all those original issues. So when I saw the ending of one of the next Netflix episodes and him waking up in bed with the nun.
Yeah.
I freaked the hell out. And, I was like the meme of the guy that was in Heroes that could hear the voices in his head.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh! I was like, this is the best thing ever. And then, a week later, we have to announce that all of the Netflix Marvel shows are now canceled.
Right.
Son of a... But I just read the other day that Charlie Cox has canceled all his convention appearances, apparently coinciding with some reshoots for the new Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that. And I know Kingpin from the Netflix series is in as Kingpin for the MCU, which is a perfect choice because he killed it.
D'Onofrio. Yes.
Oh, he was so good.
Absolutely.
He was like unbelievably good. I thought their Vanessa was, after the initial meeting, I thought she was a little intense.
Yeah.
And not over the top, but she started scaring me, and I'm like, I don't remember Vanessa in the comic books ever scaring me. Be wary of her, but but I mean, they did a great job with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did get the I do have one X-Men omnibus.
You do?
It is the first print omnibus of big storyline. They go into an alternate future. It starts with the 4 issues of Legion Quest.
Age of Apocalypse.
Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, that's I got that one about a year and a half ago. Read it. Yes, because I did that very. It's almost that typical comics thing where, in my late teens or whatever, I quit for like 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
I came back into a comic shop, like 9 years later, and got hooked all over again. But I actually walked away from comics right before that, so like right around like late '94, and that's like a '95 storyline. So I missed that the first time around. And I had like this buddy who was Age of Apocalypse. Like I met him in college when we were going and doing our teacher classes, and he was like that was like his thing, and he always recommended it. And everything that I'd heard of, like once I was back in, is like 90s X-Men is touch and go. Not very consistent, but like maybe Age of Apocalypse. So I got that omnibus, read it, loved it. In fact, am a couple issues away from just like putting together the floppy run of it, just to have it with all the different books. And
I actually just found my floppy run like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
and I actually bagged up like the issues, like from the Gen X issues are all together, and I've got like a little torn off like notepad, like a pocket notepad thing, where I wrote down like, because the series that I didn't collect, I probably like missed an issue here or there from getting them all. So I've got lists in there of exactly what issues I need. I know they're not very expensive. So
no,
that way
I've like my Age of Apocalypse. I mean, besides, X-Men Prime, X-Men Alpha, and X-Men Omega, which might cost you like $10. Everything else is dollar bin stuff.
Yeah.
Almost across the board. In fact, across the board, all of it. And that's, I like that. I out there putting together runs. I love just as much as like getting, spending a little bit of money on something that's a bit more of a key. I get just as much pleasure from finding, completing that run from the dollar bin as I do anything else, for sure.
Oh yeah. Like I like going and finding stuff. Like if there's something I want to read, and I'll stumble across like a package deal, at like a store that's advertising like online, whether it's Facebook or whatever. And I started shopping through Comic Book Shopping Network on Facebook.
Okay.
And I caught a deal. I've got it here. It's still in this big giant box because they do a Build-A-Box where they ship you just over an entire short box of comics.
Okay.
In one drop shipment. And one of the things that I grabbed was Mike Grell's John Sable Freelance from First Comics.
Kidding.
It's not the complete run. There's like 2 or 3 issues missing, but I have, and it went on past 40, not too much longer, but it's basically 1 through 40 for like $15.
Very cool.
So I'm like, oh, I'm paying, about 50 cents an issue.
Yeah.
Like I go, and then I almost welled up a little bit. Yeah, I remember the quarter boxes. Of course, I was 16 at the time, but they didn't last very long. But you can find all kinds of great reads. But I mean, there's certain things that I'm gonna wait till I can get it in like a nice hardcover, like John Byrne's Fantastic Four run. Yeah. Still, in my opinion, the best run of Fantastic Four. After Stan and Jack.
But I mean, but let's be honest. Some of that is the best run for its historical significance, not necessarily every story that they told. Whereas Byrne's run, I think on the Marvel side of things, I think the 3 seminal runs of the 80s, the ones where the storytelling, if not the art as well, that is just so tight and just so wonderful, and just, even though it's limited by certain like 1980s tropes about how you wrote comics, they stand the test of time. And that's, of course, Claremont's run on the X-Men, right, which is the entire 80s, right?
Hands down.
I think Walt Simonson's Thor run, and then Byrne's FF run, for sure. I'm with you on that, totally. Those are the 3 that, while I was aware of them as a little kid and poked around with them and collected them, was not like hyper aware of like, this singular creator was driving this and follow it. But like as an adult, those 3 I appreciate almost more than anything else.
Oh yeah, for sure. Those, I mean, Claremont's the reason I dove so deep into the X-Men, because I didn't know who the X-Men were before I discovered that. But I didn't. I was introduced to them in that awesome episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, nice! Really?
And it was great, except the whole terrible Wolverine scene, where they decided we're going to make him an Aussie, and he's only going to use his claws to pick up fruit and offer snacks to people.
Yeah. I actually discovered the X-Men in a very strange way. So I don't know where it came from, but I had somebody gave me a mass market trade paperback. So like literally the kind of little paperback book you'd shove in your back pocket, right?
Oh yeah, like the digest.
And it reprinted the Mutant X Proteus saga, like those 3 or 4 issues, and then the 2 or 3 issues of which were a few before that, of the first time the X-Men ran into arcade. And this was, I mean, those came out, those are like very early, those are early 80s issues. It's kind of it's before my time, before I'm reading comics, but I've got this mass market trade paper. It's in black and white, and it's tiny, and there's only 2 panels on a page. And the panels are not shaped the way the panels are in the book, and it's 2 panels per page, and it just covers those like 5 issues or whatever. And yet like completely destroying, the pacing and storytelling that comics do so well. And yet it worked because it was those great stories. And I just loved it from that day forward.
Oh yeah. I love the Pocket Digest. I'm missing, I think, two out of the entire Legion of Superheroes run that DC did.
Oh, really?
You know, I got like three more like last year for like, you know, for like $1 or $2 a piece. And I'm like, sure, I don't have these.
Yeah, cool.
You know, I'll take those. You know, those were big when I was a kid. They were like, they started out like at $1.95 and then went up to like $2.95 at some point. Those in the big little books. Oh, I've still got those. I've still got the big little books I got as a kid. One is probably buried underneath something here on my desk, but it's an antique.
Yeah.
From the early 40s. And it's a Mandrake the Magician.
Oh, no kidding.
And then from my time in the 70s, I've got a Long Ranger one. I've got a Batman one, a Spider-Man one, and my favorite one, which was the Fantastic Four versus Dr. Doom.
Cool.
So, yeah, I've still got all those here, and you know, a nice big pile. And then I found out the bottom fell out of the big little books, and then I started, you know, looking on eBay and be like, ooh, let's see what I can get for a bundle of comic-related big little books online.
Excellent. Very cool.
So, tell us about your background writing and into comics and why you chose comics.
Yeah, well, it was a lifelong dream. This is my first book. So Parallel is actually like this sucker right here is my very first attempt. It's my very first script, my very first comic. And a lifelong dream, but I kind of came about writing it in a fairly backwards fashion. 20 years of it sitting in the back burner of my brain saying this is something I want to do, and yet not having the motivation and the catalyst and the spark to actually sit down and attempt it. Mm-hmm. In fact, a few years before I even wrote the script, the same dude who I was telling you about who like turned me on to Age of Apocalypse, like we were brainstorming, doing adults approaching middle age, brainstorming cool comic ideas as you do over the phone, and like the idea of a story about parallel worlds and a different version of you reaching out as it happens in parallel. Like that idea was brainstormed several years before I even wrote this. Still not enough of a catalyst to get me to sit down and do it. Now, I had been writing before that. I mean, my day job, I've been a public school teacher for 21 years, but like I had written and published plays at the elementary school level and at the middle school level with some, the big play publishers that sent them out to schools and local theaters and stuff, because that blissful ignorance of, oh yeah, I can do that because I'm running these drama clubs and we didn't have a budget. And I'm like, well, we need skits, we need plays. I know, I will write them. Just that kind of irrational confidence that you can have sometimes. And so like I had these years of experience with that and some success with that. And then what happened is one summer when I would normally sit down and write the play for the next season, the third thing fell into place. So I had this motivation, this lifelong dream to write a comic, to participate. I had the sci-fi twist, the comic booky trappings of what the story eventually became. But the thing that actually spurred me, that got me, kicked me in the butt and make me actually sit down, the actual final spark, the catalyst, was quite literally talking to some former students of mine. And I've been doing this long enough where I have students who are, pushing 30 now, basically the same age as Landon in the book. And one conversation sticks out in my mind right now with this young lady who I had, years and years and years ago. And she was just talking about how she was going through that existential crisis that so many of us do at different points of our life, where just like that, 5 years, 10 years have gone by, and that dream you thought you had forever to get to, it seems like it's passed you by because you deferred that dream. Her in her early 20s, it had to do with a dance studio starting in Chicago. And she was going through this crisis about like, where is the time gone? Like, is it too late for me to pursue this dream? And it just clicked for me. And so that summer I sat down again with that kind of irrational confidence and blissful ignorance saying, well, I can write plays, I can do this. It's a much harder and more difficult animal to write a comic script, but I didn't know that. So I sat down and wrote the first half of Parallel, 32 pages. So something I always wanted to do, but then just through that kind of that not knowing how to do it, and you just dive in, feet first, head first, whichever analogy you want to use, and just went for it, and that's how I got there. So I wrote that kind of first half in a bubble. Shopped that first 32 pages. In fact, I stopped. The page it stops on is the page you and I were talking about before we started recording, when Landon wakes up and comes out of his coma and he's on the ventilator and he's like, all these things I'm seeing in my head are real. Boom, that was that cutoff point, 32 pages in, and very old school, not very 21st century. Took that script, cover letter, a pitch, and I took it to Motor City Comic Con that year and started walking around and walked up to the Source Point booth, handed it to him. Just so happened to the first person I talked to was Travis McIntyre, the president, co-founder, and editor-in-chief of Source Point, with the most glorious red beard you've ever seen in your life. Walked right over to him. You're a strange person. It's like you're trying to pitch me a comic from 1971. Everything is digital these days. Where's your Kickstarter? I was like, I don't know these words you're saying. Handed it to him. He read it that night. We were in business the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's like, you know nothing of this business.
Right. Exactly.
Let me take this and I'll get back to you. Wink, wink.
Right. He's like, I like the cut of your jib. You're weird. You've got a lot of enthusiasm. You're going to hustle for me. Goes back and reads it, and I like your story. Let's do it this weird way that we haven't done it in this industry in about 2 decades, but we're going to do it the old school way with you. So
we're going to go all old-fashioned, and we'll go from there and see what happens. And this is what happened. You finally have a comic book after all.
That's right. And it exists, and it's in the world, and it's almost sold out. There's not that many copies left, and it's probably going to, because obviously cons are back, and I did my first event last weekend at the Detroit Festival of Books and got to sit on the other side of the table, which is kind of like that last missing piece, right, of this whole experience of the creation process, the publishing process, the promotion process, and the last piece that had been missing now for almost a full year. When distribution and then cons and everything got derailed last spring, and now that's kind of going. So I've got some cons I'm booked in, and some signings and some events, and that's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now. So
you did your first convention.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 1 day. It was like the Detroit Festival of Books. So there wasn't a lot. It was kind of like a starter thing, getting my feet wet. I mean, not that I don't know what the convention scene is, but not on this side of it. But it was like my first event, and I got to sit there and I got to sign books for people and pitch the book to people walking by, and it was really cool. I loved it.
So, how did shall we put it? How did 14-year-old you react to being a creator at a comic book show?
I got to be honest with you, every step of the way has been absolutely amazing, because the fanboy in me just can't believe that each piece happens. Now it's indie comics. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, right? It takes one of the biggest takeaways from this whole process has been I will never take the effort and the time and the group effort from so many different people that goes into making a comic and putting it on the world. I'll never take that for granted again. Every single thing that I read since I started this process, I have this new appreciation for how much time, how much effort, how much love goes into it, and from so many different angles and people too. So, over the last couple of years, as it, each piece comes together, it's like this bit of time where life just continues, and then just an explosion of 14-year-old me fandom geeking out, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. The signing of that contract was huge. The sample art that came in from Adam Ferris when SourcePoint and Travis hooked me up with an artist. The first page that he sent me that was completed. When Justin Birch, the letterer, who is a god, he does letters for everybody, did a FaceTime call with me and let me watch him letter 2 of the pages of my book. I turn the page in previews and there's parallel right there. Do you know what I mean? And like every single step of the way was just amazing. But I'll tell you, to go back to your original question, I didn't sleep well the night before because, on one hand, I knew I was going to be okay being on the other side of the table because my day job for the last 9 years, at least, has been convincing 14-year-olds that like grammar isn't boring. So like I can sell an idea. Like I knew I was going to be able to do it, but I'd never done it before. Like, the unknown is scary, right? I mean, thematically, the book, one of the reasons that we defer our dreams so often in life is because it's always easier to do nothing than to do something. Mm-hmm. Ooh, why did I wait 2 decades to take the plunge into something I knew I really wanted to do? Because it's always easier to do nothing than to do something, right?
Yeah, I've been getting good at the nothing part.
Yeah, it's great. It's so easy. It's so easy. And so I was like really, really nervous about it, but then loved every minute of it, of course. And I did the same thing when I was becoming a teacher, a couple of decades ago. At college and doing my internship / student teaching and stuff, you're watching and absorbing every person who's in the middle of it and living it, right? And you're taking the things that like I can be that, I can emulate that. I'm definitely not going to be like that. I'm definitely not going to do that. And I have done the same thing. I was studying for last weekend for years at every con that I ever went to. Every creator that I ever, as a fan, went up to and said, will you sign my book? And how they reacted to that and how they interacted with their fans, whether I'm watching them online or how they're interacting with me, I was taking everything I could, absorbing every second of it, making the plan for who I was going to be when I was finally on the other side of that table. Bernie Wrightson was maybe the most incredible human being from the creator side that I've ever met in my life. He was a saint. And like, I learned just as much from him in saying, okay, here's how I'm going to behave if I'm ever on that side of the table, as I did from the people who were gruff with, or dismissive of their fans. And you take that, and it doesn't matter if it's, if maybe they're having a terrible day. You don't know what's going on inside their head, but like, if that's the only interaction that a person's going to have with me, maybe ever in their life, you got to do the same thing with teaching in the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. I don't care how bad of a day I'm having. You can't take it out on that kid, right? It's not that kid's fault that you're having a crap day. Same thing with like somebody who comes up to you at a con. And I had people come up that came to this show just to see me and just to get their book signed. I had people that I met for the first time. I had people that I, came over and talked to them and they were interested in it. It doesn't matter. If it's going to be their interaction with you, you've got to make it a good one for them, no matter where you are in your headspace.
Oh yeah. As much as you might actually want to take it out on that kid.
You're right.
Because he's never turned in a homework assignment
sure
all year. And you're like, oh. But then, you're going to be the one ending up in the principal's office. And that shouldn't happen anymore because you graduated a few years before. And,
a couple.
Just a couple. But, that's why they make those punching bags that you can buy at the store and take home. And at the end of the day,
right.
Between dinner and talking to the rest of the family, you can go a couple rounds with that punching bag, hit the showers, and carry on.
You got it.
I know this because I now have a teenage daughter. So I'm sorry.
I have a 15-year-old young man living in this house with me right now that yes, a big sigh, I think, says it more between the two of us than any words we could say. So let me join you. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
You know, I've been, you know, on like screen calls like this with friends and family, and they'll be like, "Oh, how old's your daughter now?" I go, "She's about to be 13," and almost everybody in unison just goes, "Oh, we're sorry."
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's a cliche, and yet it's very, very true.
Mm-hmm. You know, and then I will eventually have one person say, "What are you going to do when your daughter starts dating?" I go, "She's already been told she's not allowed to date till I die."
Yeah.
And the times that I've coded out in the hospital being ill do not count.
Correct.
You know, I also know that in my closet, I have a t-shirt with a picture of a spade shovel that reads, "I have a beautiful daughter, a gun, a shovel, and an alibi." And an empty shotgun shell to toss it, boys, hopefully many years from now, and tell them after 10 o'clock, they come a lot faster.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, it's comical now, but when it happens, it will not be comical.
Correct.
You know, but she's into art, and all she wanted for her birthday this past year from me was a couple of big pillows for her bed, oversized like body pillows and stuff to relax on, and she wanted a new art program for her iPad.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, okay. She has only allowed me to see a couple of things she's ever drawn, like in the last, you know, the preteen to the teen years. But I've seen them and been astounded at the amount of her talent, which makes perfect sense because I have none. I'm the guy that artists get mad at when you do the cliche, "Whoa, you're an artist? I can't even draw a stick figure." Which apparently, from talking to an artist friend of mine in Italy the other day, really pisses off artists. So it's like, you know, if you have at least one hand and an arm, you can draw a stick figure. It might not be a good-looking stick figure, attractive. The circle might not meet, but you can still do it. So,
right.
You know, stop.
Right.
You know. So that got us to here, and the book is almost completely sold out.
Yeah, there's I think there's under 200 copies left, and so like I you know, most likely those will go on the con circuit this summer and fall, and because SourcePoint does gangbusters at cons. So like if anybody wanted to get their hands on it, we can talk a little bit about it and pitch it, give people an idea of what it's actually about in a minute here. But like if people want it and aren't going to be at like a con that I'm at, you can get it through sourcepointpress.com right now. And they've got digital copies, they got paper copies, you know, the few that are left. There's a couple of in the world. I'll show you these. There's a couple of these variants left. Less than 50 of those left. And then this is what I really want to show you. That sold out in like 48 hours.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So I've got one copy that was gifted to me, and then there was a virgin foil variant that the store gave me, and this is like the only copy that I own. But I'll tell you this: people need to come over and hang out with me on Instagram and follow me, because in the next, I think probably end of August, I'm going to be giving away this slab 9.8 of the actual book. That'll be a free giveaway on my Instagram, and that's just at @JDouglasWrites if you want to come over and follow me there. Yeah, so like you can go over to SourcePoint Press and get it, and it's basically, you know, the book means a lot to me because it kind of scratches the two itches that I developed as a comic fan in my early teens, and then really, really grew to appreciate when I came back to the hobby, like in my mid-20s, when I came back into comic shops, hunting down a Neil Gaiman project. And that's this. It's got your, if you're just like a sci-fi comic book fan, it's got that for you. If you want something that's going to make you think and go a little bit deeper and is rereadable, I made sure that was very important to me, that because those are my favorite type of stories, that's there too. So it's parallels this 64-page one-shot graphic novel that is just like a dark, twisted sci-fi tale that really begs the question for the reader, like, what price would you pay for a second chance at the dreams you thought you left behind? And it's about Landon. And Landon gave up his dreams of a career in music in his early 20s. He deferred those dreams, as so much of us do, because we think we have all the time in the world, right? And he takes that job and he settles into that relationship. And just like the former student who really was the catalyst and inspired me to go out and write this, he wakes up 5-10 years later and he's going through what the kids call these days the quarter life crisis, right? Where that existential dread, that anxiety, that stress, that depression, that stagnation that your life becomes, because 5 years will go by in a blink of an eye and you haven't made any progress on what you thought your life was going to be. And for him, it manifests where he's at his depressive nadir and he starts hearing voices and seeing visions. And obviously, as any of us would question his sanity, but it's actually an alternate version of him who's offering Landon a second chance at that life that he thought he left behind. And unfortunately for our Landon, it might just not be in his best mental and physical interest to pursue the cost of those that second chance with the parallel Landon. So it gets pretty dark, but this crescendo of tension as he tries to experience this life he thought he left behind, but at what cost, right? But I think what I am really proudest of the most is, like, it's really about, at its core, that thing that most of us go through, that universal kind of theme of time passing and what that does to us and how we deal with that. Because, and Landon goes through this in the book, where it's a very isolating feeling, right? Whichever way it manifests for you, whether that's anxiety or existential dread or depression or whatever, a life in stagnation, like however that manifests for you, it's very isolating because you're going through it seemingly alone, right? It's your life. And yet the irony is everybody goes through some version of that, right? Middle age for some of us, quarter life for others of us, everybody goes through it. It's like this universal thing, and yet we tend to feel very isolated by it. And that's really kind of the core at the center of the book, and how Landon deals with it, and the help that he seeks, and the people that support him, the people that don't, and then the decisions he makes on what to do going forward with his life.
Yeah, it's not easy. Let me tell you, I'm in my 50s, and my mother was right about everything.
Yeah, right.
And, I'm just like shaking my head going, yeah, I know. And I'll be hearing voices in my head, and it's just echoes of the past from things my mother said to me as I am repeating them to my now teenage daughter and going, oh God.
Right.
I've turned into my mother.
Probably even cognitively does not have the ability to truly hear what you're saying, and will have to discover it on her own.
Yeah, well, first she would have to unplug her earbuds.
Right. Well, yeah, there is that too.
I'm like, oh,
But while this is not like a 100% autobiographical story, in fact, there's a little bit of me, I think, in most of the characters. Like, a lot of people ask me, like, are you Landon? No. Yes, but no. I'm just as much some of the other characters as I am him. But definitely, forgive the name drop. There's a parallel between the idea that I waited so long to do this thing that I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And was it too late? In my case, no. Right. And that's advice I give anybody. I mean, the two biggest things that I hope people take away from this book is, number one, you are not alone in whichever way that this thing that we all go through in some version or, manifests for you. And it's always better to talk to somebody than to try to just deal with it on your own. Right.
Yeah.
In Landon's case, there's a pretty positive portrayal of the mental health industry in this book that I wanted to research and portray in that way. Does it necessarily solve everything for him? No, but it's definitely something that helps him. As long as people take that away from it, like the idea to talk to somebody rather than nobody, that's a big win. I hope one person does that. That's a victory for me. And then the fact that it's probably not too late. Right. If you've got something, do it. That was actually advice that I've given and was given to me. Just do it. You want to write a comic book? Go write it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds glib the first time you hear it, but I don't know what will happen if you sit down and pursue your dream. Whether it's whether it's talking on the internet to people all day long about comic books, right? Or sitting down and writing something or drawing something or whatever your dream is. I can't promise you what happens next. All I can promise you is that if you don't do it, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be good, but once it exists in the world, you've got now something that exists that you can make good. There's something to work with. But if it becomes something, it doesn't become something, I don't know. All I know is that if you don't do it, nothing will happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I started this trip many years ago. I wrote a couple of articles for fanboy.com.
Okay.
One on the history of Conan, from books to comics to, games and all
Cool.
that happy stuff. And then I wrote a kind of like a comparison, but not comparison, between DC and Marvel. And it was New 52 versus Civil War.
Oh, fascinating.
And then I didn't do anything for a long time. And then I, coma. And a while afterwards, I ended up being introduced to Martin Dunn, who's been a comic book creator for years, has since retired out of the business, and all he wants to do now is make music. But he put up a website, and he had me start writing for him.
That's cool.
And I was interviewing bands. I was reviewing albums, and I was starting to do comic book stuff, but they didn't get a lot of comic book stuff. So I went out of my way to hit up publishers to try to get comic book stuff. So I did, small press stuff and a few other things. And then I interviewed Andy Belanger, who now has an indie book out called Mother Trucker, who at the time was working on a run of Vampirella, which, by the way, I love that character. I don't know why. 14-year-old me says, yes, good call. And he was working on a run of that started off kind of like a Mad Max version of Vampirella.
Yeah.
And so I was interviewing him for that, and then one of the officers from Outright Geekery saw that, and because I was sharing it around everywhere, and he approached me, and they said, "Do you want to come on and do reviews for us?" And I went from doing writing actual tickety-tackety reviews to and ended up becoming the person that talked to all the publishers.
Oh, cool.
So I was the content delivery manager Well, they had their website up, but we grew so much that we blew up the website, and the owner decided he didn't want to dish out money to get a bigger website with higher bandwidth and everything.
Right.
To keep going. So he just went back to where he started, which was just running everything on social media.
Interesting.
At which point I said, okay, screw it. I'm going to go start a podcast. And here we are.
And you did it.
Over 150 episodes later, also started a podcast with a cohort from Outright Geekery, Thomas Hewlett, that is called Okay Boomer, the podcast, where all we, yeah, great, isn't it? You will never forget the name of that podcast now.
Nope.
And all we do is we'll pick a back issue to read for a week, and and then the following week we'll come on and we'll dissect it. We'll go through it like page by page, and give our 2 cents with it, and interact with anybody that shows up in the chat. And we've done lots of stuff, lots of indies. We covered Bill Wilmingham's Elementals.
Oh, cool.
Which I just got the naughty cover of Elementals #1 with Fathom swimming with the dolphin.
Okay.
Which caused a bit of a shock jock panic at the time, because they were calling it the sex cover. It's Fathom, and well, she's naked, swimming with a dolphin, with the bottom of the dolphin facing her, and she's facing this way, swimming in the cover, and it was a little too risque for the late 80s. So I finally got a copy of that, and I've got the rest of the series. And we've done like so many books. We've been doing it like over a year, and this week we're doing the first issue of Sandman Mystery Theater.
Oh, there are 2 original pages from issue #4 up there behind me. Signed
Nice.
by Davis right there. Yes.
Nice. Well, I'm a big Matt fan already, so.
Oh, well, yeah. He was nice too. I met him a couple of times. Sandman Mystery Theater was my book as a kid that I loved, but like at 12, there's really no reason why a 12-year-old should love Sandman Mystery Theater. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so not a 12-year-old boy's book, and yet, God, did I love that book.
It's so noir, and
yeah.
I don't know why I like it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yes,
Sandman
Mystery Theater was one of my jams as a kid for some reason.
Yeah, and it's great because the week before we covered something in it where Sandman showed up, the original Sandman, and a few months prior, like when a holiday comes up, we'll tackle like either a big mini series that is actually in a graphic novel. So we did Kingdom Come.
Okay.
Which, if you remember that story,
mm-hmm.
that entire story plot started and revolved around the original Sandman, and things that happened at the beginning of that kind of intricately weaves into the story, and it was outside of the fact that 4-issue run was just legendary
for sure.
But we do stuff like that, and then once a week I do an art stream with an artist that I'm a big fan of, and we just go on and talk nerd crap, all night, and he draws like live art on the stream, and we have a blast. So this is all I do. I talk to one artist, and at least I talk to at least one artist a week, a whole bunch of writers, and possibly some more artists. So that's pretty much my week, and sometimes I go crazy like this week.
Right.
I do 3 interviews in one day. So
right.
Just so I can take a day off, but I'm actually not taking a day off next week. I'm just taking a day off from my personal show to go and run somebody else's show. So, but I'm having a blast. I was doing 3 episodes a week, and then I ended up in contact with so many people from around the world with the time difference. So I'm interviewing creators from around the world, from the UK, from South Wales, the Netherlands, Germany. And so I'm like, well, with the time difference, I can start like around 1 Eastern and still make it. So like 1 Eastern, UK, not Central Europe, but UK time, like, London, that general area.
Yeah.
It's like 5 hours ahead. So, 1 o'clock here, it's 6 p.m. there.
Right.
So it's worked out. The problem is sometimes I end up, people saying, well, my campaign's ending or the book's hitting the shelf this week. I'd really like to be able to get on. And then the next thing I know, I've got 6 episodes of Creators Outlet, an OK Boomer, and a Seanzilla art show. I'm like,
right.
Oh man, it's a good thing I don't have a job. I'd never be able to do anything. It's like physical therapy and comic book stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you finished reading any of those books you were reading? No.
Nope.
Why not? I'm doing 9 shows this week. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess. I'm like, well, so it's what I like to do. If cons had been open all last year, I would have been at a couple of cons. And when I cover a con, I do not leave Artist Alley.
Right.
I go to Artist Alley and I hang out there. 2019, I covered, because I'm in Southern Mass, so I covered Rhode Island Comic Con in November 2019. And I got to meet Neil Adams.
Nice.
In a good mood.
Doesn't happen every con.
Nope. Well, it's when they were still setting up. So,
yeah.
And then after the fact, he realized that I was a member of the press. He just thought because I was in a wheelchair, they let me in early, which was, it was true on both accounts. Right. But I talked to him for like a little over an hour. Him, his daughter, and his setup guy. So,
okay.
I just got to talk and, just basically thanking him for like all the cool stuff he did, on Batman back then, and stop myself from saying, can you please stop making Batman books now? Because,
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. It's, and I got to meet, and I basically hung out for like a combined probably like an hour a day for like all 3 days with like Graham Nolan.
Oh, wow.
As soon as somebody would come near, because I talk to Graham all the time online, and we did like an interview when he launched his first indie book the other year, The Chenoo. I interviewed him for that before we went video.
Okay.
So I talk to him like, on a regular basis and stuff. I also met Bill McKay and talked to him, and Bill was depressed because he was like a year behind on commissions, but he got caught up that weekend, so it was good. I got to meet Mike Grell, Christopher Priestley, who does Vengeance of Vampirella for Dynamite, Joe St. Pierre, and a bunch of indie guys.
Yeah,
like lots of indie guys. Indie gaming developers. Freelance illustrators. I knew a couple of them that were there already, and have like stacks of work from them. Like, commission stacks of work from when I, every time I meet a new artist and I like their art, I'm like,
sure.
What can I buy from you today? I go, I need to switch out something hanging up on the wall. So I need a new piece. What do you got?
Right.
Well, I got this Walking Dead stuff. I go, do you have anything comic book? I go, I know Walking Dead is a comic book. I go, but do you have anything over the top comic book, not just lopping off a zombie head? So I do stuff like that, and I get to meet like a few other people. But I was there. I was only there for a few hours on Friday, but I was there from open to close on Saturday and Sunday. And I didn't, outside of going to the men's room, I did not leave Artist Alley at all. And it didn't hurt that over by, and this was probably planned, that there was a beer truck selling adult beverages like 10 feet from the CGC tables.
Yeah.
That's so get them drunk so they don't realize how much they're paying to have their book encapsulated in a piece of plastic.
Got it. Right.
So now the next big question is, what is next for you in the comic book world?
Well, I got two things going on right now. One, I'm writing a short story for a possible anthology that SourcePoint Press is putting out. In the middle of actually writing that right now. And then I've got my second project on deck. It's just a matter of getting the green light on it. It's something else that means a lot to me. It's similar to Parallel in the fact that it's got deep kind of universal themes wrapped in a nice fanboy wrapper of comic book tropedom. And it's a post-World War II small-town Michigan story. It takes place in 1946, right after all the troops come home. And the protagonist is a 15-year-old girl who is very loosely based and inspired by my late grandmother. And kind of it's a superhero story, enhanced strength and speed, but it's really, really about identity and race and gender and being comfortable in your own skin, and kind of dedicated, like I said, to my late grandmother, but also all the young ladies who have come in and out of my classroom for the last 20 years who still don't feel comfortable being who they are in a world that doesn't necessarily always accept them. And then extrapolate that times 10 going back to 1946. There's a lot of actually family history in it because it takes place for the most part in this real factory in Plymouth, Michigan, that got a war contract. It was a wire factory that got a war contract down the road from Willow Run, where they're making bombers. They made Marsden mats at this place called Wall Wire. And Marsden mats are, even if you don't recognize that name, we know if you're a history nerd like me, you know what they are. They're the fabricated long sheets of metal that are punctured that they use to create the fabricated runways in Europe and the Pacific, where you get a strip of land and you clear it, you can make a runway to have fighters and bombers take off and land from. And it's actually one of only two factories in the United States that held on to their war contract after victory, because the Berlin airlift is coming. There's this place in Alabama and this place in Plymouth where they kept that contract. And all those Rosie Riveters got kicked out and sent home, and all the troops came back and got their jobs back. And that's kind of the backdrop for this story, where there's this young girl who at 15 years old cannot reveal in a world where that would, definitely be a bit of identity crisis. The fact that she had strength and speed that manifested when she was 12 years old and found out that her father died in the war, and now is trying to earn enough money to keep their family afloat and going to work in this factory that her mother used to work in, her father used to work in. And actually in real life, this place is where my great grandfather worked during World War II. Wow. I got to actually go, like in the research, we were talking before we started recording about all the research I did for Parallel with doctors and psychologists and police officers. And some of the research I got to do with this was I actually got to go to the factory, got there, check this out, a week before they tore it apart and turned it into individual office places. And I got to see like all the original machinery and all the brickwork and all the woodwork and stuff like that, and took a lot of video and a lot of pictures. Issue 1 is already written. Issue 1 through 4 are plotted, and the story beats are there, and the research is done. And I just need to now start that process of like finding an artist and getting the green light from SourcePoint to give it a go. And hopefully that's the next thing that I'm putting out into the world.
Well, here's something that kind of like ties. It doesn't tie in with it, but time wise, it does. My loft that I'm broadcasting from, which
Yeah.
it's tough to look behind me and say, you don't actually live there, do you? Yeah, I do. I just have a lot of stuff, and going through stuff, boxes of books. It's long comic boxes when you're in a motorized wheelchair, so it's good once you get them in your arm and a little over your shoulder, and then you can control it with the other hand to move around. But this is a refurbished factory.
Mm.
It opened up as a curtain factory in 1918.
Oh, wow.
And where I am, there is, and I can't remember the word for it, but when two bodies of water, salt and fresh, mesh together.
Yes.
That's what's out here. So the bay comes in and merges with this river that comes around. And the boat used to come up like 100 feet from where my front door is now.
Okay.
Used to pull up there, and they would unload the boat and haul this stuff in on carts and whatever they had for pallet jacks back in 1918.
Right.
And they took it down because there was a flood on the first floor last year, but somewhere they still have a historical painting of this place from when it opened and what it looked like outside.
Very cool.
And I'm into history.
Yes.
And there seems to be a lot of history where I am, living now. Well, I live in New England, so there's always a lot of history here, from the whole, the Bunker Hill and all that stuff.
Yeah.
and Salem, and not all of it is good history, but you got to take all of it, mesh it, shove it all in like one big pot, stir it around, and learn from the good and the bad. So,
for sure, one of my favorite parts of the country to visit, for sure. Yep, it's the history everywhere you turn.
Yeah, that and bars.
Yeah, true.
Especially in Boston.
Yes.
It's like, well, see, we play hockey over here, but they play baseball over there. So we have to have ones within 100 walking feet. And you mean crawling feet? Well, that too. And I'm like, okay, it works. I've taken the team many times to go watch my World Championship Boston Bruins play, and mostly to watch live hockey fights, which they frown on nowadays. I'm like, what do you think we're all here for? Okay, we want to see the team win, but we want to see a knockdown, drag out hockey fight. Not necessarily a Terry O'Reilly running up the stands and beating up people that disagree with his team, but. And I got to meet him, which was awesome. So I've got a picture of Terry O'Reilly from that game before the game started, and then after the game finished, and what a bloody pulp he was.
Holy cow!
So it was very interesting. I get to talk to him for like a half hour.
Very cool.
But
okay.
It's a lot of fun just talking to people and learning stuff and getting out and about.
Yeah.
So,
well, I appreciate that too, and I'm really happy that you would have me on to chat with me tonight.
Oh, sure. If there's anything I like doing, is talking to more and more people that create comics. You never know. One day I might dive into the deep end of the pool. Hopefully, there's still water in it.
Correct.
And because otherwise,
yeah.
It's like, no, been here, done that. Don't do that. But I mean, I just love comics. I think it's the best storytelling medium.
Oh, I could not agree
ever.
more. I truly believe it's like it's the most malleable medium, right? Like it does so many of the things that film does well, and yet a bunch of things that film can't do. It does a whole bunch of things that prose does really well, but a bunch of things that prose can't do. It's like this amalgam in the middle that just creates magic. And then indie comics themselves, without that editorial mandate, without that 80 years, for whatever limitations it has in how much harder it is to get them out into the world and get them to a wide audience, the advantages that like Marvel and DC have of having 80 years of infrastructure behind them are also things that limit them too in what stories they tell or what stories they're willing to tell. Mm-hmm. And there's no limits on indie comics. I mean, like this, this book gets produced in indie comics and not somewhere else. And so like, I'm really thankful for that and definitely really appreciative of the opportunity and having it out there.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the book.
Well, thank you.
More success, hopefully in the future. Cause I'm definitely all in for, the book about the factory in Plymouth.
Yeah.
You already got me hooked with the historical aspect of that and everything. And just knowing that there's going to be, as much as it might be entertaining, there's also going to be a whole lot of truth and history involved in it, just for the fact of all the work on the back end that you do when you research something.
Sure.
So,
well, I'd appreciate it if anybody who's intrigued by the book at all, come and see me on Instagram at J Douglas Writes, and find out what cons I'm going to be at, or order it from Source Point Press, and then hit me up there. Anybody who buys a copy, takes a picture of it, them in the book, send it over my way, and I'll blast out in the world and send some love your way. But definitely come over to my Instagram account so you can at least, at the very minimum, join in on the giveaway of that slab 9.8 of the book. Oh,
for sure. I'm gonna once I'm done with this, I'm gonna hop on my phone and go over and give you a follow.
Cool.
Because it's fun like that. And thanks once again. And everybody head over and follow Jason over on his Instagram at J Douglas Writes. And we'll go from there. We'll look forward to this, and I'll be keeping an eye out and inquiring with people I know over at the company. Hey, is that Jason Douglas book sold out yet?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, we're down to like 40 copies. Cool. Oh, we're almost out. I go, I know. Cool. So thank you once again. Follow them. Check out Parallel from Source Point Press. Get yourself a copy to get today. There's a couple of different covers you can get. And look into that, because those are the variant covers are very limited.
Yeah.
And like he said, it's close to being sold out, only a couple of 100 copies left. So go check it out today. Jason, it's been wonderful getting to meet and talk with you, and we hope to do it again very soon with another project.
Thank you, sir. I truly appreciate the time. This was fun.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time on Creators Outlet, but not today. Three's my limit.